Samantha,
the
use
overrider.
override to exert. Make decision without all-rounder.
5
all-rounder.
override battles.
Hey, look, me and Callista are soulmates again, like last week.
Nice.
Now we're
Angel
the
Arts,
squad.
Angel Arts avoided overriding others. All-rounder, Joey, committer, Callista, because you rarely made a change, and Hannah was the explorer. The debate team, total deadlocks 3, overrides used 22. That's a lot different than it was last week when I think we used 4, maybe.
5 battles.
Yeah. Woo.
Interesting, very interesting.
Hannah's the explorer, Callista's the committer. Nice. 22 overrides used. Good job, everybody.
Yeah. I think that
Really
means
cool.
there were 3 overrides left because there's 6 of us,
There
right?
were 2 left.
I had
think.
1 left.
I had
one
0.
left.
I was
think
saving.
I think I used my last one.
Yeah.
So.
It certainly is more exciting when people are using their overrides now.
Yeah.
So that's there's
I think
definitely
everything changed when we knew that they refreshed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Last
I like
time
how
we didn't know.
I like how
It's
in the
on.
first week our debate squad was I think it was like teamwork or something because we very rarely ever overrid and most things were like picked, but this time it's debate because we overrided a load of times.
Also, Sam, how does it feel actually hearing all the voices and like hearing all the sound effects?
They sound way different than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Were you able to at least watch the videos that I posted?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're up to date then. That's cool.
Which one was the most different for you from what you imagined? Like,
Vince.
the characters. Vince, really?
Really?
Yeah.
He sounds very
Wait.
sexy. To give him credit, he does sound very attractive.
It was a little more attractive than I was expecting.
It's like,
I
damn.
have to. I do admit, like even from the first chapter, like Vince, I kind of was crushing on Vince the whole time.
It's the fact
Of
he's got
course
it's
you
the
were.
fact he's ginger. That's totally it.
He's ginger.
Yeah,
Ginger.
he's
and
ginger.
I don't know. There's just something about him that's
He seems like
He's
he'd
got-
be really nice. He seems like he'd give really nice cuddles. Like he seemed like that kind of guy.
Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy, and the fact that he seems like a great dad, like that's always for me.
Yeah,
That's always
sorry.
attractive. Somebody who could be a good dad.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's
Well,
why
think
Hawk
about-
was like, don't forgive her. She's not worthy of your love.
That is so far the one time that I'm like, this game needed to have a decision where you can say, "Let me think" or "Give me time," because you're literally after
Yeah.
telling me you're after cheating on me for the last 5 months.
Well, if you think Vince is attractive, what will Bruce look like?
I don't know.
All right, so here's the player summary. Let's read
Player
these
summary.
out.
Looking completely
Let's go in. Let's go in order, shall we?
Angel. So Angel Arts me cares for others and acts with empathy and confident. I puts great faith in themselves. Interesting. Kevin, go ahead.
I got family, sticks by their family, whatever it costs, and fierce, unafraid of confrontation and physical danger.
Callista.
I got the same as Kevin, family and fierce.
Sam.
I got honesty, offers candor, and expects it in return.
Yeah, you do. All those overrides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then principled, guided by strong moral convictions.
Interesting.
I got love, cares
Nice.
for others and acts with empathy, and principled, guided by strong moral convictions.
I got exactly the same as Roma, empathy and strong moral convictions.
Joey.
Right, so I got family as well. Sticks by their family, and then fierce, unafraid of confrontation and physical danger.
Same as Kevin and Callista
Yes.
looks like.
Mhm.
And Mikey.
I got honesty and principled, like Sam.
Just like Sam.
Yep.
Interesting.
There's a clear divide. It's really cool to see.
Yeah.
I do like the
Let's
fact
take-
that they give you two separate things for this. Like, there's your values, and then there's your traits.
Mhm.
as a person.
Traits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh.
Oh, so there's the. Oh yeah, because we didn't play as Jay this time. We played as Vince the whole way
No,
through.
we played
Yeah.
as Vince, but two versions.
Vince held the gun. Tricked holds to reach office. 72% actually did what we ended up tied up in the office. Worked together to get free. Called Dante. Escaped the office. Warned Jay. Cops invaded motel. chose not to run. Jim got knocked out. Exchanged Zoe, and then joined the pizza debate. We convinced Dale to share the pizza, which is apparently a minority choice. We got used as a human shield, and 56% warned Dale, and then we got back to safety with Dale. Vince, Michelle, and Jim, and injured Jim remain. So there's 4 different ways for that to be a thing at the end, apparently.
I'm wondering if Dale could have died. I feel like Dale could have died.
Oh, if you didn't warn him, definitely. Yeah.
He would be dead.
Yeah, so there's the dream, then packing up, 60% finished packing up, and 60% impressed Michelle for finishing the pack up. So I assume there's a way to pack up and then impress Michelle, or a pack up and unimpress. Put Zoe to bed, reassured Zoe, relaxed on the balcony, kissed Michelle. Michelle answered the call. Let Michelle finish call. 73% of people did that. We confronted Michelle. I assume if you don't confront Michelle, it ends there.
Right, it just ends. Yeah, interesting.
Michelle admitted to her an affair, and then we got angry, apparently. 19% of people calmed down. And then we didn't forgive Michelle, because I assume then it's the different options, like you could get angry at her, break the glass. You could try and kiss her, which means that, like, you know, maybe there's some sort of weird way of forgiving her or something. And then you could just leave. You could just be like, I'm not staying here tonight, and just go. So that's very interesting to see all those different ones.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to see that if you pick the got angry option, then you still have all the endings available, all 4.
Yeah.
Well, if you would go the other route, then you're kind of stuck with the last 2.
Yeah. If you got, I think that's if you don't tell Michelle, if you say you're sorry for not being available emotionally to Michelle, or physically, I suppose in this case, and physically, not more. Interesting. There's a lot more choices in the motel though, because obviously there's the fact that like there's the Vince held the gun, and then there's the 2 other endings there, and the bottom ending is entirely different than the choices we would have gotten apparently. The bottom start of that storyline in the Desert Dream motel is different than the top 2 entirely. Apparently, so there's an entirely different way to start off that entire chapter, it seems.
So we had a decision between Zoe and Jim, right?
Yeah.
And since there are 4 ends, do you think Tyler would have killed someone inside if Dale would have been shot, and that's the 4 endings?
Maybe.
Like it's always between Jim and Zoe, and then either someone's dead or not.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that was a hard choice for me, because my gut reaction was save the child. But then when I allowed myself to think strategically about it, I was like, I don't think these 3 Holt brothers would purposely hurt a child. I don't think they purposely would, at least.
So far, it seems
versus
like
Jim.
so far I'd agree with you. So far, I would.
Yeah. So I thought that since Jim was had some health, obvious health problems right now, I felt like he was the one that's more in danger in that situation versus my daughter. But who knows what could happen? I mean, there's that crossfire that happened. I mean, anything could happen with her still being in the scene. So ultimately, that's why I picked Zoe.
Yeah, because there is the option to run, which gives you an entirely different branch where there is another big decision with 3 different options, but it all leads to the same choice. So I assume if you try to run, it might be a thing where you get hurt, where Vince ends up getting hurt, where Vince is the one who gets pistol whipped, or maybe Vince even gets shot in the crossfire. Gets grazed, maybe, I don't know. But it seems
Michelle.
Or yeah.
Oh, it could be the injured person that's dead.
Or the dog.
Yeah.
Maybe we saved Zeus. I think we just saved Zeus by not running.
There's the achievement pop. But yeah, there is death, so I assume... Well, so far we haven't seen anyone die.
So far.
But I assume at some point that will happen. Where it'll either be Vince dying and maybe the game will end and just say, hey, go back and choose another choice, or something else will happen. Also, apparently every single lightning bolt you see is a story changer. And I'm just looking to see what's story changing. So like the Vince injured, the exchanging Zoe is a story changer, the chose not to run is a story changer. And then
Yeah.
at the bottom, the only
I don't
thing,
think any of them were.
just the ending, just it didn't
Just the
forget
ending.
Michelle. Yeah,
What you do at the end is story changer.
interesting.
Speaking of major choices, I wanted to ask the group about their thoughts when selecting Warndale versus not Warndale about the sniper. I'm curious about that one because we were very split there too.
Do you want me to go first since I overrode?
Sure.
As much as I think Dale's an asshole, I don't think he deserves to get shot. The guys just want to like fix whatever problem they have with their family, because obviously they mentioned that their family's in massive amounts of debt and stuff like that. They didn't want anyone to get hurt. If they wanted to hurt someone, they would have just... Dale dropped the pistol that he shot the sheriff with. If he had wanted to kill the sheriff, he could have just shot him in the head when he shot him the first time. He could have just killed him and just been like, alright, we don't need to worry about this guy coming after us. But he didn't. He dropped the gun and ran. Which to me means that these guys don't actively want to hurt people, but they will if it's a case of, obviously, they need to defend themselves. Because that's what happened when the cops stormed the place. One of the deputies got shot. I don't know. It just sort of seemed like, in that moment, I think my version of Vince would have warned Dale, because Vince doesn't want to see anyone get hurt at the end of the day. Not his family, not anyone else. At least my version of Vince doesn't. So I would have felt like Vince would have warned Dale no matter what.
Yeah, I'm
Also,
gonna.
Dale
I'm
laughs
gonna
at my jokes. There's that too. Dale laughs at Vince's jokes. So.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback slightly on what Mikey said there, because it was kind of very similar reasoning for me. I don't think I think Dale is mixed up in a lot of stuff that I don't think he necessarily anticipated would happen. But somebody already said it, but nobody's actually died at this point. Obviously, people have been threatened, people are in danger, people have been shot. No one's actually died. And I think the scene, everything changes the second that somebody actually dies, and the situation gets a lot more serious at that point. But to this point, whilst these guys have obviously been dangerous, they've been threatening, they have not actually killed anybody yet. So I feel like the first blood is almost on our hands at that point if we step back and let that happen. That was my take on it, why I chose to warn Dale.
I warned him because Zoe was watching, and she's like right there in the car. And I mean, that would be so traumatic to just see someone, So I did that, and then I also knew that the family was back inside the hotel, and so like if his brother dies, what would Tyler do to his own family who's back inside? And it comes sort of like, what if there's like a revenge thing or something? I don't know. So I was coming from Vince's perspective, where it's like my daughter's watching and my family's inside. If his brother dies, what happens to my family?
I'm curious then, Sam, if you were playing the game at the end of the last chapter, and we were given the choice to shoot or not shoot Tyler in front of your family, which one would you have chosen? I'm just curious.
I wouldn't have shot.
You wouldn't have shot Tyler.
Mm-mm.
Okay. For the same reason. That Zoe's right there. Makes sense. Okay. Who else wants to share? Warren versus not Warren.
Yeah,
Kevin, go ahead.
I voted Warren. I just kind of did it because I feel like Vince isn't like a gun guy or anything, and he's like, like he watches a lot of movies and stuff, and whenever you see that red dot, like the hostage could get shot too. Like you're right next to that dude's face, and all it takes is like just like a random shake or whatever, and then your head's where Dale's head is, and then you get shot. And I don't know, it was just in my head, it's like it's too close for comfort for Dale, and it's just like I just gotta warn just so I can make a move without him blowing my head off or letting the sniper blow my head off. So it's kind of like a self-preservation kind of move.
I know that in the moment, like, it's hard to think about it, but in my opinion, I think warning Dale would have put you at even greater risk of getting hit, because now you're introducing a new variable into that. So, like, somebody who's if somebody's a well-trained sniper, like you kind of hope that everything lines up properly, and I feel like by warning the person that's about to be sniped, like they can easily like move and put you into the line of fire. So again, that's just my knee-jerk reaction.
That's definitely like a possibility. I just think like you can always predict that the sniper will hit his shot, but you can't predict the guy moving or like just even him backing up. Like, you know, he's not looking where he's going. He could trip. Like
fair.
I trust the sniper, but I don't trust the guy with the gun to my head kind of thing.
That's fair. That's entirely fair.
So, like, I want to hear from one of the people that picked to not warn Dale, like, what their, like, reasoning was.
I was one of those people, actually. But I want to see if anyone else wants to answer first before I answer.
I can go.
Go ahead.
The reason why I chose to not warn him, my logic was that so far out of the three, Dale has been the most erratic. Where Tyler is trying to keep calm and Jay just doesn't want to be there, Dale has been the kind of one, he's been the one doing all the provoking, and I presume he was the one who was taking pot shots at the wall and generally being a bit daft in this situation. And my logic was just like, take him out now. Take him out so we don't have to deal with him in the future.
Pragmatism, essentially.
Yeah. So that's why I chose not to warn him. I'm like, if anyone is going to get someone killed, it's probably gonna be him, just because he's like, if like he decides to be the big man and like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Oops, my finger slipped. Like, I could easily see him shooting someone by doing that because he wants to look big and tough.
You see, I think the fact that he apologized to Vince about hitting his dad kind of contradicts that, because he was like, I'm sorry I hit your dad so hard, I didn't mean to, it was just a moment thing.
I don't think he'd mean it, but that's like he's boasting and trying to be like, oh yeah, I could totally do this, and then he does it and then he's like, oh crap, what have I done? I wasn't thinking, I was too hyped up. So that's
fair. I agree
with you. I don't think that Dale would intend on actually killing anyone. Hurting people, yes, but not killing anyone. However, I can see him, because he's a loose cannon, unintentionally killing somebody. And I feel like of the three, he's the one that's the most risky of that. How about Joey or Roma? I don't think I've heard from either of you.
Go ahead, Roma. You first.
For me, it was purely out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's fair. Out of curiosity is fair. Everybody else voted this.
I did not feel strongly about either choice, and I was curious what would happen if I didn't warn him. That was it. And that's also why I didn't change my decision when there was a tie, because I was like, I'm gonna stick to my guns here. I'm gonna just see what happens. And so when Mikey overrode and chose to warn him, I didn't feel strongly enough to override that. So I said, all right,
Same.
Guess we're going this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Joey?
So for me, it was a little bit multifaceted. So moments Vince decided to try to shoot Tyler was the moment that I figured out that this character is getting really defiant right now. So his care for his family is way bigger than whatever happens to these kids, save for Jay, of course, because Jay does. But that moment, it was an opportunity to just take one out. For one, there would be a lot of confusion at what happens, and the cops knew what they were doing, so they had the cards in hand at that point, so it was an advantage for the cops. And I think as well, tactical looking, I think Vince has so much information right now that he knows that there will be a shootout eventually. This is not going anywhere without that book. So at this point, he had the opportunity to choose where the shootout would be. It would be either inside or outside. And if the sniper took him out, then shootout would probably be outside. They would start to shoot at Tyler from the inside, but his family was way offside, so they were out of danger. While if everyone's inside, the cops again try to get in, everyone is free game. And that's mostly the reason why I did it. So it's just, again, try to protect his family. and the Defiant. And yeah, Tyler and Dale are not. Yeah, he doesn't really care for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then for me, I also chose Do Not Warn, because in an ideal world, ideally I would like for nobody to get killed when the situation is over. But I think in that moment, I figured these characters, as in like the Holt brothers, other than Jay,
It's Holt.
The Holt brothers, like they kind of are the ones who put themselves in this mess in the first place, and I feel like karma eventually is gonna like catch up to them, and so it was either gonna catch up to them now or it'll catch up to them later, and so I decided to just be passive and just let karma play itself out in that moment, and I was willing to let itself play out. So that was my reason for just choosing Do Not Warn. But from a storytelling and writing perspective, what I really like about that choice is they did a great job, especially in chapter 1, to establish just how much of an a-hole Dale was. I feel like they purposely were trying to make you dislike this character so much that even jokingly you'd be like, yeah, I hope that character dies, like in the next chapter.
Yeah.
But then when push comes to shove and their life actually is in your hands in that moment, especially because, and maybe a lot of it is because of how we made our dialogue choices. Like we actually got Dale to like Vince, and so that's another thing. Like maybe my feelings about this situation would have been different if Dale and Vince were not getting along at all and they still hated each other.
Yeah.
But the fact that Dale was actually like warming up to Vince did like tug on my humanity a little bit more, and that did make me think twice about whether to warn him or not warn him. So again, like, which from a storytelling perspective, I was like, that's a really cool like moment, because had you asked me, you know, at the end of chapter 1 whether to warn or not warn Dale, it would have been way easier for me to not warn. But for here, I was like, I kind of am on the fence here.
You see,
like, I'm not sure.
I actually do agree with you. Like, let's say if in chapter 1, Dale, if we didn't manage to curtail Zeus and one of the brothers hurt Zeus, like, let's say if that was Dale who hurt Zeus, I'd have been like, fuck him, he's getting shot, I don't care. But since
He's dead.
Since Dale sort of, we saw more of his humanity, even though he is an asshole. Like, he is, like, just because someone's an asshole doesn't mean they deserve to get shot, is mine and Vince's mentality on this. It's just like, I don't like Dale, but do I think I should, my daughter or I, because remember, Vince would have to live with seeing that too for the rest of his life. Do I think I want to see him with his brain splattered all over the tarmac outside of this motel in the middle of rural Arizona? Hell no. Screw that. I've already got enough trauma going on. I don't need that in my life.
I want to get away from Dale now, and I wanted to ask all of your opinions on the sheriff, because the sheriff also has, you know, an agenda too, and I'm curious about your feelings about him at this point.
Any sympathy I might have had for him went out the window when he said, "Find that book or people will die."
Yeah.
Corrupt piece of shit.
Like that is clearly the top at the top of his priorities right now. Not the hostages, not anyone's safety, just that book.
Agree.
And so whatever sympathy might have come from that, I was like, I mean, in chapter 1, I was like, okay, he's taking care of his wife. He seems to care about her or whatever, but oh no, he got shot. That's unfortunate. But now at this point, I'm like, okay, never mind about any of that.
If I recall correctly, his wife wasn't too fond of him either, if I'm remembering right from the first
that's
chapter.
right, yeah.
She was like, he doesn't tell me anything. Yeah.
And she said that bastard has it coming to him or whatever, something like that. So
All these people with marital issues in this game.
Maybe Dante's seen Bruce too. Everyone's sleeping with Bruce.
Everyone's seeing Bruce. Maybe Dante is Bruce.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Maybe Dante is Bruce. It's the plot thickens. What a twist. It seemed like a lot of people were nodding, and they have share the same sentiments with Roma. So I guess my next question to follow up on that is, does your opinion of the sheriff, did that affect whether you warned Dale or not? Because I was kind of feeling the same way that Roma was feeling, and I was like, you know, the sheriff just wants to get this book at the end of the day. Do I really care about having his sniper plan work or not? And that was the other reason why I was hesitating, because I wasn't really like starting to buy into the sheriff's. I wasn't having as much faith in the sheriff and his decision making. So
yeah, I mean, I don't. I agree with what Roma said about the sheriff, and again, like the fact that he's putting people's lives at risk is, you know, obviously not okay. But I couldn't have made that choice to warn or not to warn Dale, like just to spite the sheriff, like, because in my head, like, I don't know if this was likely to happen, but in my head it was like choosing, does Dale die or not? That was because I obviously don't know, and I couldn't choose to let somebody die because the sheriff's an asshole. Or something more I don't know if I can say that word on your show, sorry. But because the sheriff is a jerk. So
yeah.
I have a question for everyone.
Please.
So with this chapter having so many overrides, I'd like to ask, which one was your favorite and why?
That's a good question.
I loved every single time Sam overrode me. It was so much fun.
Yeah, there was a little battle going.
I think the most heated one was during the Bruce part, the cheating divorce Bruce part. So I think that was the most exciting one, because it was, you know, just like you said, just like the Wild West, just everybody's firing their overrides back and forth.
Yeah. I can't wait till we get like a 3-part override. Just everyone.
Everybody just piles on.
I was tempted to jump in, but I held off.
It's fun.
Yeah, I do have to say, like, the overrides is definitely one of my favorite features in this game. That was not when we played the Quarry. It was not a game mechanic there, and I feel like I can see that being a really like neat thing to have put into games like the Quarry. So hopefully other games follow suit.
I still think my favorite override is Kevin in the truck.
Yes, that's true.
It is the MVP override.
It set the tone.
Set that tone.
So I spent all 3 of my overrides on the kiss, and the first kiss, and I kind of did that because, like, you know, obviously there was like the whole Bruce thing, but that was like towards the beginning. Like, we knew a name, but we didn't know the full story, and I kind of wanted to just have him like kiss his wife just to see if that would like change anything with like you know, like the feeling of the kiss. Like, you know, it's like when you kissed me, did you not feel anything? Or like, you know, if that would change.
Interesting.
Like as it progressed, because, you know, obviously, like in my head, I'm like, okay, Bruce is definitely like, there's something more going on there. But I wanted to see if that would change the dialogue to like, you know, like when I kissed you, like, did that not, like, did you not feel anything? Or, you know, maybe Vince says something like, you know, when I just kissed you there, like, I didn't get that same reaction that I did because you weren't putting it like 100% or something. So I just wanted to like kind of like, you know, start Vince out from like I'm still wanting this to work, but then as he like learns, he's like, okay, now
I like that.
Now that you're giving me all this information at once, and like I had to pry it out of you, it's like, yeah. So that's why I spent all 3 of mine on that.
I just wanted to get straight to the fight. just
okay.
Like front immediately.
Okay, so I had to go off and do something real quick. So to summarize everything I've missed, my opinions on the sheriff. He's got a wife who's paraplegic who has a tracheotomy. He's using that money to probably pay for her medical bills. So whatever he's doing it for a reason. Second point, I don't like him, but that doesn't mean that I think I want him to do whatever he's doing right now. Next point was favorite override. Shout out to Kevin and the truck, but I think it's probably the one where I think it was Hark overrid something at one point that made me kind of go, oh,
the photos?
Yeah, the photos. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that made me kind of go, oh, interesting. And as for the stuff with the fighting, this is where we get. This is where I have to dig deep because I actually did mention this. I have something to talk about here.
Yes.
I'm in a polyamorous relationship, and the thing about any kind of relationship is that you require communication.
Yep.
So at both sides of this argument, they're both in the wrong. The fact that she didn't talk to him about this, and the fact that he didn't want to talk about anything, makes it both their faults. However, she's the one who cheated. And this applies to any situation where it's both their faults, but she's the one who did something about it. And on top of that,
for 5 months.
Yeah, for 5 months. And then she's like, it's just sex. I'm sorry, but if it's just sex, it happens just once. And then you're like, it's never a thing again. But they mention multiple times that she comes back from nights out and she's smelling of wine and perfume and all that. And I'm like, yeah, she might not love this guy, but she definitely likes the sex a little bit more than just it being sex. So I was like, all right, there's something, this isn't right. And it's not, it's something that I have various experience with that I was like, I really wish there was an option at the end to say that, I'm sorry, but I can't make that decision now just after learning. That's the only argument I have against this game right now, is that there isn't a decision to say, I'm sorry, I can't forgive you right now, instead of it being yes or no. That's the only decision in this game that I wanted there to be a third decision in.
Because it feels like such a natural thing to say in those moments. Like, I don't know, I have to think,
On that, go ahead.
Roma.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
Go on, Roma.
Okay. Well, on that, kind of in that same vein, like I did feel like some of the decisions this time didn't seem to carry much weight or quote unquote matter in the long run. For example, I used up 2 of my overrides to look at the photos versus just pack them up. The reason why was because I was hoping we would get a little more insight into their family dynamics, maybe a little backstory or something. But instead, he just kind of looks at it and then packs it anyway. And so in that case, it definitely didn't feel like my overrides mattered in that case. It didn't feel like that choice necessarily mattered. And I feel like it's kind of the same with Kevin when he chose to kiss, and that didn't come up in the conversation afterwards. So it those are the ones that are jumping out to me because we spent overrides for those.
You see, I would argue the fact that you felt passionate enough about them in the minute that they needed overrides, that they were important to you. Maybe looking back at them, they're like, oh, I wouldn't have spent them on that, but you did in the moment, which is what matters.
And I think it affected your traits and your values.
Yes. 100%.
Because
I don't care about those. I want the story.
You don't care about this. Well, to
to
explain, I overrode pack the photos first. At the end of the day, I didn't think that override was really like that big of a deal, but I did it because I was establishing my priorities. Like, if I'm gonna pack things, like, my priorities is to pack the photos because I'm sentimental. I'll pack those first, and then I'll pack everything else. So that was why I overrode that, was just to establish, even though I'm like, this isn't really that big of a decision, but it's important to me, therefore I'm overriding it.
Yeah. Overrides aren't about making like massive amounts of impact on the story. I think it's about you trying to like assert your personality and your beliefs on these characters that you're playing.
Right.
And I get that. I totally get that. It's just for me personally, it just felt like, you know, we spent our overrides on something that, because we were hoping that it would give us a little something more, and it didn't feel like it paid off. So like that is something to consider in the future. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, is this so important to me that I'm willing to spend overrides on this when I could use it later, you know, on something more urgent.
To counter that, I mean, Kevin's truck, like,
100%.
He got a lot of mileage from that. He got a lot of the truck.
I mean, the only thing that I will say is that now that we know overrides refresh, it's not as big of a deal now. Because if like we came into this and it was like, oh, Kevin still has 2 overrides and Joey still has 2 overrides, it means that we have to go through the whole 7-hour game with a combination of 24 overrides total.
Yeah.
Which would have been a lot different than we have 24 overrides per chapter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to go over it as well because I think even these small decisions that you override have some influence because it's a part of the conversations and story that we see, and it kind of influences the rest of the decisions we make. I think the best option, the best example of this would be the joking, because I overwrote at the beginning. I overwrote a joke thingy, and at some point we kind of established with our group that he jokes a lot, and then in the end it had influence because that's why Dale probably liked us more, is because we were joking.
I think it paid off. I think
He's like, oh, he made a funny joke.
Even
I
though
like
the
you.
override itself didn't really matter.
Yeah, like that still led into the whole office thing, but it made Dale like us more. So
Right.
Yeah.
Which means we have some leverage, which means, he owes us for saving his life. I feel like we'll get, hopefully, some things in Chapter 3 that hopefully will benefit from that.
do you guys want to know how many chapters are in this game? I haven't looked it up yet, but I can if we want.
Nah.
No,
Let's.
cool.
Let's.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss my overrides, and then I wanted to hear Sam because, like, me and Sam ended up in a shootout twice with our overrides.
Yeah, please do.
So I'll start with. So the first time it happened was near the beginning of the conversation with Michelle, where I think the choices were. I think we were kind of pushing on the Bruce issue, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm sorry, and it was kind of back off, or no, there's more to this. I think that was the exact wording.
Yep, I remember that.
And so at that point, all we had was a text message to go off. As a rule, for me, I try to, and it's very hard to do in practice, but I try to give my partner the benefit of the doubt over my insecurities or what I've kind of seen in front of me. So in that moment, I was like, okay, all Vince has got is the message. And these things do happen. People can receive unwanted attention. It seemed unlikely at that point, but I wanted to give Michelle the benefit of the doubt, which is why I opted for sorry. And then obviously we did our override battle and we went the other way. Michelle then admitted to, the affair. And at that point, the next time we battled it out was forgiving and not forgiving. So I agree with Mikey in that if there had been any middle point or leeway in that choice, so something like, I'm not sure at this moment in time if we can move past this, and maybe, or anything like that, I would have opted for that. But because the game was giving me a binary, I either forgive you when we move from this, or I don't forgive you and we're done. That was kind of the implication of the choices. I feel like because of their situation, they're not someone that's like in a couple, that they're not a new couple or anything like that. They're married, they have a daughter.
That's true.
In my personal opinion, when things like that happen, you're doing everybody a disservice to just go, that's it, we're done, we're leaving, let's divorce, let's work out what we're going to do with the kid. Like, I feel like those kind of things need to have weight. They need to be discussed, and they need to be you need to work out whether or not it's something you can move past, or you need to pack your bags and leave. It's not something that you should, in the moment when you're upset, when you're angry, just say, that's it, I'm done, in my opinion. So because I had the binary in that moment of forgive, not forgive, I opted to forgive just to see if they could move past it. Because I figured if they can't, we'll find out later in the game that they can't move past that, and then fine. So that was my reasoning, but I very much want to hear from Sam, because like she overrode me and we went the opposite route. So I would love to hear kind of like Sam's.
Yeah.
It's interesting because those are the same reasons that I picked mine, but I picked mine because I thought he should be allowed to say that he doesn't forgive her, but they have the option to work through it later on. Like that was him establishing, I don't like this. This was not right. I don't forgive you. But I think I didn't see it as like, I don't forgive you, now we're done. I felt like it was like, this is me establishing how I feel. and I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. And yeah, obviously the communication thing for sure, 100%. If there had been that third option, I would have clicked it without a heartbeat. But I feel like it was important for him to establish, I don't forgive you for doing this. And then in my head, I was like, clearly there's more story because we see them like traveling together. So obviously they want to work through it. Otherwise she wouldn't be in these rest of these chapters. So I was like, I want to make sure he establishes that he didn't like it. He didn't just give in. He didn't roll over and take it. He had an opinion about this. He had feelings about this. But he was gentle about it. He didn't throw the glass. He wasn't yelling at her. It was sitting down and talking, and they were trying to open up and communicate. But I wanted to make sure that he didn't appreciate this. And another thing I don't like is that she kept stacking on lies. She kept saying like, oh, it was nothing. We're just colleagues. It's the academia stuff is really competitive and we're just friends. Like, okay, come on. We can all smell this BS like a million miles away. And I wanted to confront her because I wanted to see if she'd actually open up, and she did. And she like immediately, like once you broke through those lies, her face got, I think I even went like, oh, when she started crying. I think I was mean, but I think I was making fun of her, but I was like, it was very clear to me that something was happening, and I wanted him to like push through those, especially like the walls that she was talking about. Maybe he starts breaking out and reaching out and saying like, I see something's happening here. I want to know what's going on. And when he started doing it, she broke down and she started admitting her own feelings. And then they started actually talking. So that's where my reasoning came from.
I'm glad we're having these discussions. So thank you, Hannah, for asking, because it's really cool, especially since there's 8 of us. It's just really cool that, you know, we make these decisions, but there's a why to them. Yeah. To quote Halasair, it's all about the why. Yeah. So we all could be feeling the same sentiment, but ultimately we pick specific decisions for X, Y, and Z. And I think that what you and Sam, for example, have said, like, I agree with both of you, even though you pick 2 different things. You know, the way you explained it makes,
you see, I actually
very, very good sense.
I actually disagree with Hannah, because I've been in that situation and I've just said, no, I'm leaving, or no, you need to get out, because it was in such a situation where I didn't feel safe staying in that room with someone or staying in that situation. But I also agree with Sam in that sometimes something will happen and you need to work through it. But I firmly agree in some situations you just need to say, no, you need to leave, or I'm leaving. And it's the same thing with Sam, where I believe that you need to be, as a person, able to say, I don't forgive you. Even though I would like to move on from this at some point with you. I don't forgive you right now, but let's work it out.
Yeah. And I love that, too, that you said that, Mikey, because a lot of us make decisions based on our personal experiences or what does and doesn't trigger us. You know, like, there's a lot of things. This game touches on a bunch of very, like, polarizing topics or intense topics.
They do mention at the start that there is certain things that are triggering. There is a trigger warning at the start of this game.
Exactly. So I'm curious, you know, as we continue playing this, how people make decisions based on those kind of things, and do you because I certainly override based on things that trigger me a lot. So yeah, you know, this is all very, very cool stuff.
Can I just...
All right.
Sorry, go ahead, Roma. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Callista.
So what I was going to say, the thing with Michelle, that it was the trickle true thing that really kind of aggravated me, because it was like, oh, it was one time. Okay, well, when did it start? January. And it was, she didn't say how long it had gone on for. She gave a month. And how many of you realized that was taking place in May? Because it didn't say that the scene took place in May. There was just a shot of a calendar that said May. And so that's the only reason why I was able to be like, okay, well, this takes place in May. So 5 months. She didn't say that, because the player could have thought like, oh, well, maybe this takes place in February, which that isn't so bad. And then it was the thing of like, oh, do you want to get even? Have a one-night stand, which
I hated that.
Yeah, that was weird.
Oh, I wanted to throw something. I hated that.
That was so weird.
That's not how you work that situation out. I hated
childish. That's like a child's response. You hit me, so I'll hit you back. Like, no,
I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Michelle?
Also,
I swear to God.
Just to be petty, that's not equal. You
No,
had
it's
sex
not.
multiple times, so you're allowing me to have sex
Yeah.
once. Like,
You're like,
Let
go
me
have
have
a
5
one night
months of
stand, and
sex.
I'm like, no, that's not how this works. I'm gonna go and have an affair for 5 months.
It would be
5
5
months.
months.
Can we have 5 months with Bruce, or does it have to be someone else?
yeah, I want Bruce's number.
gonna
now.
work
Yeah, here,
Time
give me
share
Bruce's
for
number,
this.
and I'll go sleep with him for 5 months, and then I'll come back.
There we go.
Anyway.
I think the game did a really good job on verbal communication as well in that scene, because
Yeah.
I didn't really base my decision on what was said, but mostly how she was reacting on just facial expression. I knew immediately that she was lying, just the way she was acting and the doubt in some things that she said, and it was so obvious that she was lying. So, yeah, no chance given for her.
Again, looking at this from a storytelling perspective, it's interesting how they're presenting us with this situation after we've already established stuff that has been happening in the present. Because if you remember, we decided to stay with Michelle in the motel. We decided to give her a back rub.
We sided with her when Jim and her were arguing in the car.
Right, having zero knowledge that this scene about their affair happened
2 days ago.
So
2 days ago.
right, 2 days prior.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like how I feel about that, because we were not informed of a lot of things in chapter 1, and now that we knew all these things, how do I make sense of some of the interactions we made, previously?
Yet again, I revolve back to Jim. Jim isn't forgiving her in the minute, but also he wants... Sorry, not Jim. Vincent. Vincent isn't forgiving her in the minute, but he wants to try and work something out. So that's why he's siding with her in the car against Jim, and why he's staying with her, because he wants to try and make it work.
I was going to explain it to myself by, Zoe's there and she's around, and so for the sake of Zoe, we're just going to continue acting like normal, like acting like nothing happened. So that's how I'm sort of
Yeah, I see
explaining why. So yeah,
makes sense.